You can all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Intro to Buddhism from the Dharma Bum Temple. Good to be with you all tonight. The last few times I was elsewhere, and I tried once to do it and it didn't work, and then I tried the second time to do it and it worked. So but it's good to be back here, sitting here. It was funny last week. Actually, when I led, seeing everybody's names on there, I don't know if I like that in a way. I got so used to just talking to this little Johnny number 5 out there and not knowing who was on. And then last time I led, I had to see everyone who was on. And it was just interesting to me how the mind shifts from having a room filled with people, getting used to that. Then you get used to just staring at just Travis and a little camera, and then you get used to that, and then you switch again, and that's kind of what life is, just shifting from each different situation and recognizing how your mind operates differently in it. And it was funny because somebody texted me, they says, "Everything okay? You seem different." I said, "Well, I was somewhere else, and it was a different setup, so it was odd for me, at least at that moment." And it had me reflect on a time years ago where we'd had dinner with a couple people, and someone said to me, they said, "I expected you to be different outside of temple than you are at temple." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" So, "Well, you're a certain way here," but I thought that was just kind of like your role as the Dharma Bum dude. And it really at that time meant a lot to me to recognize that we work towards being who we are regardless of the situation we're in, and being how we are regardless of where we're at, and how easily we can get thrown off, and how outside things influence us to think or act or respond differently. And for me, this practice has always been about just figuring out how to be in each situation as yourself, and take that wherever you go. And that's not always easy. And I think recently people have found out how hard it is to be yourself just at home. That's very difficult. And you have less things to distract you with, and now you're just stuck with yourself. But find some comfort in just being who you are. And I think that's a good place to start. And not trying to fit in differently into different places, but just be you, whoever that is, and work from there. I don't really have a question for you all tonight, so I'll stop rambling, and we'll go ahead and start with the meditation practice. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you, right? You're not going to float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working? Is it not working? Am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside the room or outside, wherever you are. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And the practice of meditation is learning to get quiet and still within all of that chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, help slide into the front third, pushing the stomach forward, allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap, whatever's comfortable. I'll guide us as we begin. We'll settle into a little bit of silence. If you happen to be on a couch or somewhat laying down, try to make sure you sit upright. You want to be comfortable, but not so comfortable that you fall asleep. So, most important, don't expect anything from this practice. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus, to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. Where is your mind? Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. Letting go of expectation. Letting go of judgment. Just sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do, nowhere else to go. no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. Most important, the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. And ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, it's quiet, calm, still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with. It's nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how you sit, the hands across the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakening. He was a human being no different than any one of us who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means very simply for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in and where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's what we get. The practice of meditation is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. And for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. So all we're working on is closing the gap, or the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice. It's not necessarily fun, but meditation is free, Buddhist practice is free. It's sitting, breathing, and becoming aware of what you think, say, and do. And that's it. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything around us, and we work on changing our mind and our reaction to the world around us, life gets simpler. But it takes time. And as we all experience the days we're going through right now, we have tremendous difficulty and challenges in our lives that we probably have never faced before, which requires an even deeper level of practice, deeper level of understanding what these teachings mean, a deeper level of understanding how to put them into your life, a deeper level of understanding the impermanence of all phenomena, a deeper level of understanding conditions coming together for a period of time and ceasing to exist. Your entire life existed in one way, and a few months ago it drastically changed for most people. That is life. Conditions come together and they fade away. And that continues our entire lives. Sometimes these conditions that come together are pleasant and joyful, and sometimes they're unpleasant and painful. But all the conditions come together and then cease to exist. And I think when I look at the heart of Buddhist teachings, this is part of what he was talking about. That you have each moment as it is, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So be with that moment, appreciate that moment. Become aware of what you think and say and do in each moment. And then that moment will be gone. So I think I'd rather just stop there. I really prefer, and especially for those of you who may be joining for the first time, to open up to questions. Meditation, Buddhist practice, any challenges you're having, difficulties. I really prefer to respond to what you all have to say and use the rest of the time for that. If you are joining us for the first time, you can just type a question in the chat box somewhere. And Travis here will share it with us all. So we'll open up to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with.
So Dylan
Go ahead.
Dylan asked, what is the importance of equanimity in this practice?
The importance of equanimity. In this, what is the importance of equanimity in this practice? So just, I guess even when I hear that question, I think of this practice versus that practice. And I'll just say this to start. To me, I like to look at just what is the importance of equanimity? Not even so much this practice, but what role does equanimity play in our lives? And, there's a lot of great metaphors kind of demonstrating equanimity, having to deal with like trees and rocks and things like that. But often I think of, there's, from my college days, I was a fraternity guy, and I learned a lot from that experience. And I was with, 18 to 22-year-old guys that I respected, I admired, I looked up to. Often people have these ideas of fraternities, and yes, they are a lot that way, but they're often really beautiful things. And in fact, when we started 5 years ago, Delta Beta Tau, For me personally, a lot of it I pull from my experience as a fraternity guy 25 years ago. And one of the things we had to do was interview some of the elders in the chapter and get their favorite quote. It sounds like a silly thing, but work with me here. And I remember his name was Paul Klakopka. They called him Gla. This is totally irrelevant, but I'm just flashing back 25 years ago. And I did my interview with him, and his quote was, "Nobody cares about the storms you've encountered, but to bring the ship home." And I've always remembered that quote. And when I hear the word equanimity, I think about that a lot, because to me, equanimity is about being steady, being balanced, remaining calm in a storm, so to speak. And that immediately ties me to that quote, because, I imagine, Gilligan's Island style, just a huge storm, and there's a ship out there, and you have to get it back safely, regardless of how rocky the ride is. So when I think, again, of equanimity, which is interesting because it almost ties into, I think, which I didn't expand on, but the original example I was talking about when somebody said to me, you're the same in certain places, is that can you be steady regardless of what's going on around you? If someone is talking to you and they're saying pleasant things and they're smiling at you and they're giving you a hug and they're kind and gentle with you, can you be steady? If someone is screaming at you, yelling at you, calling you names, saying a bunch of things you don't like about you, can you be calm and steady? It doesn't mean that one is better than the other, or good or bad, or right or wrong, and that we have to choose between the two. But our entire life is going to be filled with moments that are pleasant and unpleasant. We're going to have storms that are tremendous. And then we're going to have, calm waters. I like Disneyland metaphors a lot. So if you've ever been to Disneyland, often I talk about Buddhist practice to me being the kiddie ride. But think of the ride as a small world. And it's really slow and steady and quiet and peaceful and beautiful. And then you go on like Space Mountain, and it's pretty crazy. But what's your mind like in both of those? Your physical body is in both places. Your mind is in both places. But your emotional reaction is very different. When we face storms in our lives, can we stay steady? Can we get that ship home regardless of the situation? Will we be the same person whether we're sitting at a meditation hall or at a temple or at a sporting event or at home on your couch watching TV or at a bar at 2 a.m? Can you be the same person? And is that person kind and gentle and understanding? Or does that person change drastically depending upon the situation you're in? I often talk about, we'll sit here on a Tuesday night or whatever, and there's 60 people, and everyone's got their quiet, calm, hi, namaste, nice to meet you. They have their little pleasant, friendly Buddha voices on. And then if we just, like in the movies, we pick us all up and we drop us like, a mile down the road into a bar, what would it be like with the same 60 people a mile down the road? Very different. Because we are heavily impacted and affected by our surroundings. And to me, equanimity is about not really being affected by any of them, but being present with them as they arise. Simple words I think of, and I may have said these already, but when I hear of equanimity, I think of steady, I think of balance, I think of centered, I think of remaining calm, regardless of the scenario. So hopefully that helps with the understanding of equanimity. At least that's how I practice and observe equanimity in my life. And recognizing the moments where you're able to do it and where you're not, and then working on that. questions, thoughts?
So David asked, how can we use meditation to help break unskillful habits?
How can we use meditation to help break unskillful habits? Well, part of me wants to say, I don't use meditation to break unskillful habits. That's what's kind of sitting with me right now. So I'm going to start with that. One of my favorite expressions is an angry person who meditates is just an angry meditator. So if you're an angry person who has lots of unskillful habits, then doing your meditation doesn't necessarily change all of that. I'll come back to maybe a simple answer as to how it can help, but I think this route for me is more beneficial and hopefully more helpful. For one to ask a question, how can we use meditation to break, you say, unskillful habits? Was that the way it was asked? Yeah. So by asking that question, that to me says you're very aware of unskillful habits that you have. So the question I would ask you is, why do you need meditation to fix or change your unskillful habits? If we have unskillful habits, they bring harm to self and others. Why do we need meditation to recognize the harm we are bringing to self and others? If we change our habits and we stop bringing harm to self and others, then we bring joy to self and others, and that's beautiful. Why do we need meditation to start bringing joy to self and others? You know, what I always want to be careful of with a question like this and just this in general, and again, it doesn't matter, I don't need to know, but I don't know, what David, who David, if it's a David who's been here for years or David who's on for the first time. So I speak really to everyone when I respond, which I tend to do anyways, is that we want to be careful of using meditation as the crutch that we think is going to fix things. If you're mean to people, all the meditation in the world doesn't necessarily mean you're going to stop being mean to people. Begin to understand what you think, what you say, and what you do, and how you treat people, including yourself. So these unskillful habits are years, in most cases, of conditioning, conditioned patterns and behaviors that we have repeated over and over and over again, right? I find it way more beneficial to recognize that I don't want to bring pain to me or anyone. And I don't know that all the meditation in the world is going to impact that. Now let me give you a simple answer as to how meditation can help unskillful habits. When we do a meditation practice, the idea and the practice is to stay present. Breathing in, I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I'm breathing out. Breathing in, I see the little dot on the camera. Breathing out, I see the little dot on the camera. That is what's present. Now, if you think to what I just said about unskillful habits that have been conditioned for years and years and years, we are defaulting to patterns and behaviors we've done for years. If we bring everything to the present moment, there are no years of anything. There's just this moment. I'm just holding this. That's it. This is what's happening now. So in my meditation practice, you're working on training yourself to stay present. And if you stay present, you're cutting off the stories that you've been telling yourself for years that lead to your unskillful habits. We do a lot around here with addiction. I've worked in that environment for 20 plus years with meditation in environments where you deal with addiction. And the practice of meditation always is to bring me back to here I am sitting, breathing. Whatever pain I've had in the past, whatever trauma, whatever suffering, whatever behaviors, here I am right now in this moment. And the more you practice, the more you condition yourself to be in this moment, the more frequently you cut the stories that are the habitual patterns and behaviors or unskillful habits that you keep going back to. Cut the story. Cut the story that says I'm angry, therefore I have to do something to help my anger. And what I'm going to do to help my anger is default to my unskillful habits. Begin to cultivate compassion to rid of the anger. If you rid of the anger, you will free yourself from the conditioned patterns and unskillful habits that you have been cultivating. But that's not just because of meditation. Using anger as an example, it's the cultivation of compassion that will cut anger. And again, if you cut anger, you will cut the unskillful habits that you do because of anger. Versus what people do, meditate, still angry, acting on anger, unskillful patterns or habits. So those are just some thoughts on that. Hopefully helpful. Other thoughts, questions?
Cynthia asked, I do not want to be defensive when I encounter someone who does not agree with me regarding all that is going on, the virus, the masks, the protests, but how do I not be defensive?
So how do you not be defensive when confronted with people who disagree with everything? Well, the first thing is to recognize that, one who is defensive, and this isn't, as you know, Cynthia, not just to you, to everybody, like I just said, one who is defensive often didn't just become defensive just because there's a virus, or because racism exists, or because you're, locked in your house. Being defensive didn't just start a couple weeks ago or a few months ago. For most people, if one has the personality and behaviors of being defensive, it's probably been there for a long time. So similar to what I just talked about is, and this is again really for everybody, if you are a person who gets defensive, realize that you've probably always been that way. Now it's just in your face, maybe more so. And it's challenging you even more. And you have less avenues to escape to or escape from. So people will always challenge your views. The people who are challenging your views, they think they are right. And you think you are right. And in this situation, it's not about, bear with me for a minute, it's not about who is right and who is wrong. It's about understanding that each person has their views, and they are fully entitled to have their views. And no matter how much you disagree with them, they can have any view in the world that they want. It doesn't make it right, it doesn't make it good, it doesn't make it fair, it doesn't make it kind. But they're free to have their views. There are plenty of people in the world that disagree with your views, and my views, and everybody else's views. So the practice of patience, again, coming back to compassion, is understanding that they have their views based on their conditioned behavior and life's experiences. When you get challenged on your views, speak up. I mean, often people think that, when you look at Buddhism, if you're not too familiar with it, often people think that, the Buddha just like, they see an image of a Buddha under a tree. Maybe they think he just sat under a tree for 50 years, I mean, he, in many ways, was an activist. I think he was a rebel. He was very outspoken. He was sharp with his words. But he came from a place of love and compassion, not from hatred and anger. And I think that's the big difference from most of us, who may have great intention and have a great capacity to love and care. But when we respond to people we dislike, we get angry and we begin to hate and we get defensive. So when you're challenged, speak what is on your mind and what you have to say. But I guess for me as a practitioner, so important to learn early on was to stop trying to convince people that I'm right. And my entire life, I had to be right. And I had to convince people that I was right. And I was really good at convincing people I was right. And that my views were right. Even when they were wrong. I always joke about how many of you, you get into an argument, you realize you're wrong, but then you still argue because you just don't want to admit you're wrong. I'm sure none of you, but a couple of people I know do that. So when you get into debate and you're challenged or whatever you want to call it, try not to view it as a thing that you have to win. Try to view it as something that you're expressing your views and your opinions, and they are expressing their views and their opinions. And you don't like their views and their opinions, and they don't like your views, and they don't like your opinions. And have that dialogue. But I'm not going to hate someone just because they have a different view of things in the world than I do. Because if I hate them and I treat them with hate and anger, it's just going to make it worse. I think I mentioned this recently, but I hate to, jump to social media, but that's where so many people are living these days, even more so than ever. And I often, no offense to any of you who've done this, but I often see people, or no offense meant to people who've done this, I often see people post things like, if you have this view or believe in this person, then I'm gonna block you, or you're no longer my friend. Well, I would love to be friends with lots of racists. Please don't take that out of context, right? Because the only way that you're going to get people to potentially change is to listen to them and to open up a dialogue where they have some level of communication that is healthy. But if I look at every person that is racist or anything else you want to add to that, and I just say, I'm going to cut you out of my life, and I hate you because of that, am I ever going to have any positive influence on them? Definitely not. I mean, I have a couple friends, especially social media-wise, that I know and I love them dearly. They hate the things I share. Absolutely. They challenge everything I say. Whether they type it or not, I know they do. Right? My views are one way and theirs are completely opposite. But if I ran into them on the street, not today, but in other times, I'd hug them and tell them I love them. I will share my views, they will share theirs. Understand where people are coming from. To me, is the only way, or a way a really good way to begin to create change. Crave dialogue. Wrong word. If you want to crave something, using your question, maybe embrace is a better word. Embrace dialogue with people who challenge you. But as soon as you get pissed off, you're done. What they're actually doing is they're getting to you. There's another, going back to equanimity, there's a beautiful example of equanimity. Can you stay calm and steady when somebody challenges your views? Or do you immediately get defensive and have to prove to them why you're right and they're wrong? That never works. Ever. So, just some random thoughts on that. But I find love, compassion, understanding, and listening as one of the best ways to create change in a world that is filled with just so many disgusting things. So, other thoughts, questions? I'll do one more before we close if you got anything. I know that's heavy because I basically just told you to become friends with racists. That's not going to sit well with a lot of people, right? Now, let me add to that, unless there's another question. I want to add to this because I think I need to add to this, right? I'll just use the people that I mentioned, right? I consider them friends of mine. I don't like how they view the world. I don't like how they treat people. I don't like what they do at all. But I have to understand why they feel that way. Even if it's just one person. If I can have one person who has racial tendencies, behaviors, actions, or is just straight up racist, if I can have one person that I know that is that way, and I can be their friend, and maybe someday have them change their views, beautiful. And that will only happen if I engage in dialogue and are friendly with them. It doesn't mean I like what they do. It doesn't mean I, in any way, obviously support what they do. But if I cut them out of my life, then I don't know how they're ever going to change. And I'll kind of close this way. You know, when the Buddha roamed around to teach, and this is India 2,500 years ago, there was a lot of not good stuff going on at that time. He didn't just show up and pick and choose who he taught to. Or people didn't come to him. He wasn't screening people at the door, so to speak, to see who he was going to share the Dharma with. Whoever was there was who he shared it with. And the people that were there, some of them had pleasant views and some of them had unpleasant views. Some people, it was his cousin, Devadatta's cousin, tried to kill the Buddha, right? Devadatta's cousin. Devadatta was the Buddha's cousin.
Yeah.
Tried to kill the Buddha, right? So the Buddha didn't unfriend him, right? He taught him. Alex tells the full story, or Travis better than I, but was there an elephant involved in that? And he commented, that's a different story. But he became friends with him, right? In the end?
I don't think so.
What happened? Did he unfriend him?
It didn't end up well for him, but he never unfriended him.
He didn't unfriend him. Would he have remained friends with him on Facebook?
Probably.
Probably. There you go, right? He tried to kill the Buddha, and he didn't unfriend him. So it's a crazy thing, but for so many people right now, we're so locked into these little tiny screens, and your whole life exists in that world. I think the Buddha wanted change, and that's why he taught what he taught. He wanted to bring a sense of peace and happiness to every person's life. And that's why he taught. And he wanted suffering to end. And that's why he taught. So, heavy stuff to kind of ponder and to sit with, for sure. So I'll close on that. And I'll make sure I research and get the exact details on the Devadatta Buddhist story, and I'll report back on Saturday. So we'll join palms as we close. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most. So thanks all for sitting here tonight with us. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened this temple 14 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Just about every night we have classes going on. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers. We're not looking for students, we're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those of you who join us. We closed March 12th. We're still closed. Almost all of our schedule is online now. Tuesday night, I do an intro class like this. Alex on Wednesday does loving kindness metta class. Travis does Dharma Bum Basics meditation on Thursday. Those are all on YouTube. Everything else is on our Zoom channel, or just via Zoom, I should say, versus the YouTube channel. Go to the website, it has the calendar. Open that up. You'll see the full schedule. All of the family classes, the teen classes, the college classes, all our recovery groups, Bob's class on Sunday, everything's going on, morning meditation Monday through Friday. So again, the dharmabums.org has the schedule. This Thursday night, we have Thanissaro Bhikkhu, Ajahn Jeff. He's the abbot of Metaphorist Monastery. He's been gracious enough the last few years, usually once or twice a year, to come here to the Dharma Bum Temple and give a teaching for us. So this time we'll do it live via Zoom. Again, that information will be on the website. Just go to the calendar and click on Thursday, and you'll see the Ajahn Jeff announcement and the details for joining us there. We are still closed. There are no plans yet to reopen. We prefer to be cautious. We have quite a large community here, and our greatest concern is the safety of the people that come into these doors. And as things open up and people are continuing to get sick, is great caution to all of us. So we're in no rush to open. We'd love to be open as much as all of you would. I'd love to see all the people back here as much as you would. But I'd love for people to be alive and healthy more than anything. So we'll continue as is until further notice. So thanks all for being here. If I never see you again, think good thoughts, speak good words, and do good deeds. Be safe.